Independent journalist Ken Klippenstein was suspended from X Thursday after publishing a Substack on the Vance Dossier, the cache of documents about the Ohio senator that were allegedly obtained in an Iranian hack on former President Trump's campaign. Klippenstein released the 271-page report that the Trump team put together to vet his now running mate, and despite having access to the stolen material, media outlets sat on it, keeping it from the public.
According to The Hill, a spokesperson from X said Klippenstein has been temporarily suspended because he violated the platform's rules, sharing personal information, including Vance's addresses and the majority of his social security number.
Klippenstein wasn't the only one put on pause on the platform. Ken's FOIA attorney, Beth Borden, was locked out of her account as well. She took to X, posting, quote, "Mr. Free Speech Musk locked my account and banned Ken's over an article about J.D. Vance that Ken wrote. To unlock, I have to delete the post. I think we all need to ask Elon to unban Ken's account." Others also came out in defense of Ken. National security journalist Seth Hetna wrote, quote, "Ken Klippenstein published the hacked J.D. Vance dossier and is immediately suspended by Twitter X for publishing private information. I'm old enough to remember when free speech zealot Elon Musk was outraged by Twitter's censorship." And Kyle Kalinske chimed in saying, "Everybody who screamed about the Hunter Biden laptop story being censored on social media is flipping out over the Ken Klippenstein ban, right?" Joining us now to give his take on him being suspended and why he published the dossier is Ken Klippenstein himself. Welcome back to Rising.
Hey guys, good to be back.
Yeah, great to speak with you. And I think the comparison to the Hunter Biden laptop story is one that's very fair to make. That's obviously something that infuriated many people at the time, that this really dramatic action was taken to limit what turned out to be a legitimate investigative piece about Hunter Biden. Now, you have published this dossier that other media outlets had declined to publish, and then you were immediately taken down on X. Tell us what kind of communications you've had from X. Have they drawn some distinction or said that you can post it, but just not the social security numbers, all of that kind of thing? Update us on what you've heard from the platform.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say our motive in publishing at all, because people will, probably want to know why we made a decision different from the New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico, and all of these legacy media institutions, who I think were doing the worst of what I call media paternalism, or like trust us media, which is to say, oh, we know best, we know what the public is going to be interested in, and we can even paraphrase these documents for you because we know so well what you're going to want to know about them, or what's not going to be newsworthy. So to your specific question of what was cited for the suspension, I immediately got an email from Twitter citing, and this is interesting, two stories or two posts that I had done. One post was linking, of course, to the J.D. Vance dossier, but the second one was just a post I had linking to a story criticizing what I think is a hysterical response on the part of the federal government to foreign influence operations. Not that those foreign influence operations don't happen, not that I don't think the DOJ isn't right to prosecute cases of that, but to go and say that they're going to swing an election or have a determinative result on either side. You have Hillary Clinton supporters after 2016 saying the Russians gave Trump the election, and you had fears in 2020 of interference. I mean, to say that these frankly kind of Bush League memes and things that you see these nation states do, or financing a YouTube channel or whatever, is going to have enough is going to have an effect beyond the billions of dollars that are poured into elections now to try to move the needle like a fraction of a percent, is just absurd. So that was what the second story that was cited for my suspension was just a critique of the, I think, moral panic, overreaction to foreign interference. And there was nothing that could be said to be private in that document. So I don't know what that was about. In the first document, the Vance dossier, there was something like 170 pages long. It included several references to properties that he either owns currently or owned in the past. And then I think it was like 3 or 4 digits of his social security. As we wrote the story, it was an intentional choice to leave those in. And the choice, which I realize I'm probably the minority here, but the choice was that if this whole story is going to be about a response to media paternalism, and how we don't believe that to the extent that it's possible that the media should be making these judgment calls about, oh, yeah, this is legitimate, this is not legitimate. It seemed hypocritical and kind of phony, frankly, to to make an exception for that, especially for information which I want to stress is not actually private. You can buy any of that information. I can go on LexisNexis right now, literally in 5 seconds, pull all that up. As a reporter, corporations do it. The reason they had that address and the portion of the Social Security number is because that's how they got it. They buy it on the market because all of this is public. If Congress wants to do something about that and regulate it, they can. They haven't done so. So I don't think it's private, and that's why I published it.
Ken, you make a good point, because when I didn't read the whole thing, but when I did a quick glance of the index, it seemed a lot like a traditional opposition research file. So right away I was thinking, of course the Democrats, when the Iranians handed it to them, were like, yeah, okay, thanks, we've got that. We already spent money on this. This is what we do in elections. And it was just a kind of a bizarre cultural misunderstanding probably by the Iranians in terms of what campaigns need. There was no hacked emails. There were no dirty secrets in there. Like you said, most of it was public information or stuff that a normal opposition research firm or person could be able to provide. With that being said, also opposition research files are handed to reporters all the time. And maybe they don't just dump the research file into the public, but they pull things from it, and they'll sometimes verify it or take leads. And that's kind of dark and dirty too, because reporters should be reporting on things, not be handed stories like that. So do you think it was a way also for them to just show, give a tell that, hey, you know, we get this information already. This isn't necessarily something that was new for our viewers to see?
Well, one thing I want to stress is we don't know for certain that it's Iranians. Gun to my head, I would guess that it is. But if you look at the intelligence community's statements on what their intelligence shows, they describe malicious cyber hackers connected to Iran targeting the Trump administration. Makes sense. And so what I've reported on, it would make sense to be a part of that. But they provide no specifics as to which information was hacked, which news reports are based on hacked information. So we just don't know. And that's, I know that might sound like an abstract concern, but to give you an example, back in 2016, there was the Russian-backed election interference hacking the Clinton emails. But in addition to that, there was just some random Romanian national who went by the handle Guccifer, who hacked Clinton's emails. And at the time, it was reasonably, assumed, I believed it, that, okay, that must be part of the Russian effort. Turns out just some random guy that didn't like Hillary Clinton, didn't like the foreign policy, did it. He just got out of jail last year, I think. And he's just literally just some working class random dude who happened to hack it. So what that says to me is, and in the reporting, I've been very careful to note this. Yes, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence to suggest it, but we just don't know. And the media is running ahead with it. And the reason that they do, I think, plays into this whole thing I've been talking about, which is, I think, a disproportionate reaction to the threat posed by foreign interference.
So in terms of whether or not X is being hypocritical or not and the comparisons to the Hunter Biden laptop, I do believe the Hunter Biden laptop story was banned because it was hacked material, which X then got rid of that policy from their terms of service. And this one is apparently banned because of the posting of private information. I wanted to push back a little bit on your assertion that the media shouldn't be deciding what is legitimate or illegitimate information for the public, because I would posit that as a journalist, all the time you're deciding which stories are worth pursuing, which ones are worth publishing, whether or not the information is actually newsworthy based on who the subjects are. So where do you draw the line in terms of how deciding whether or not something is legitimate or illegitimate? Because I don't think that that's an unlimited principle as a journalist for any of us in this industry.
Well, if you go back to what I said initially, I said where possible, you should release as much as you can. And in the case of a document like this, I think the whole thing is public interest in the sense that, I couldn't find anything in it that, it's so interesting.
But are 4 digits of the Social Security number public interest?
4 numbers to just, as a principle, adhere to, that we're going to release what we have and not make I think that principle is important. Once you go down the road of, I'm going to determine what matters, what doesn't, you open the door. Okay, so to continue with that, there were also business addresses. Does that count as private? There were also associates' business addresses. Is that private? But is it relevant? There are addresses that appear in public finance records that you can find on Google right now. Is that public record? You either have a principle on this or you don't, because there's not a clear line. I don't know how to answer that question, which one of those is public or not. And so at a certain point, you have to just make, we had this in the form of WikiLeaks. We've had this in the form of mass disclosures in the past. which included the kinds of information you're describing and which media was happy to use, at some point, I think because of 2016, the norm shifted and that principle doesn't exist anymore. And I think it should.
Well, and then there's also the element of this is on a platform that has rules that now have Elon changed some of the rules when he acquired the platform, right? He wanted to get rid of this if it's hacked materials kind of thing to prevent a Hunter Biden laptop situation from occurring again. Now, I guess I don't know off the top of my head whether they've tweaked the sharing personal information kind of rule. So again, I want to be clear. Did they say that that's the part, or did they say it was hacked materials and you can't put it on there or anything of that nature? They just said it's these two posts that we don't like.
Yes, they said it was private information, and then they linked to a post that had no private information at all. Like, I mean, there's no way it could be said to have it. And so, I mean, I think that's a pretext because, as other people have pointed out, you could find the same types of information, addresses and things, and partial social security numbers all over Twitter, and that hasn't been taken down. So why this one? Obviously, Elon is not going to come out and say, oh, the guy I endorsed and am giving money to and want to win the election and talk about that endlessly. Yeah, we don't want this out there. He's not going to say that because it's so similar to the Hunter Biden case, except in that case, there were like nudes and all kinds of things that are like go far beyond the invasiveness of what was contained in this document. And so he's kind of in a bind because he doesn't want it out. And so they have to find some kind of pretext to do it, I think.
I mean, you could also just let it out because it's just not that scandalous for Vance or for any. It's just things that, again, Democrats already know about Vance.
Right. So there was this media consensus that, trust us, there's nothing. I call it trust us journalism. Trust us, there's nothing newsworthy in this. It's a kind of a nothing burger, whatever. You go through it. It was hard for me to find anything that wasn't newsworthy in it. I mean, it provides insight. It's the meta text. It's the significance of why they decided to include these things that gives you insight into tensions within the campaign, what they think his vulnerabilities are. That's really interesting. And what they listed was a lot of stuff that was kind of characteristic Trump sort of populism, opposition to support for foreign intervention, that kind of thing. And to list that as a negative, that's interesting in itself, right? And it shows that there's a split within the party.
Yeah, real quick question on that before we go. Were you able to ascertain who actually compiled the document? Because I know sometimes campaigns use outside vendors to do these vulnerability studies and opposition research. I wonder if it was an outside organization that determined that those were vulnerabilities rather than the Trump campaign itself.
Yeah, I think it has the name of the firm at the top, but I can't remember for sure. Unfortunately, it escapes my memory.
And I just want to ask one follow-up because it's fascinating to me that you got a response from Twitter. Did they email you directly or did you contact them? Because I had a story that they took down one time and I couldn't get anywhere. So I'm just curious personally, how do you do it?
No, I was suspended. They emailed me those two stories that I was describing before, and that was it. And it's been reported that it was temporary. It's not. I mean, when I go and I log in, it says you are permanently in read-only mode, meaning I can't post, I can't interact or anything.
I want that.
So what their public affairs said was just not true. They said it was temporary, and that produces a lot of good press for them because then they don't have to answer the charges of hypocrisy in its most serious form, which is someone ejected from the platform forever. And so everyone's like, oh, it's temporary, what's the big deal? It's not true. I mean, I'll post this shortly, but the message is I'm permanently unable to use the platform.
A colleague of mine at Reason tweeted a screenshot from the dossier from your post that did not include any of the social security number or whatever, and he got locked out of his account too. So there is something going on here that I think the platform, if it is committed to free speech the way it claims, really should try to explain much more clearly and restore people who are, sharing information that they did not obtain illicitly, that they believe is in the public information. Ken, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.